It is 1977. It is Interdominion Grand Final night at Albion Park in Brisbane. The sentimental favourite is the idol of Albion Park, Paleface Adios. He has come through the heats undefeated and shares the back mark with New South Wales pacer Don't Retreat and Pure Steel from Western Australia. The local hope is Sporting Sun, to be driven by Queensland's top reinsman Kevin Thomas. There are 3 New Zealanders in the field. One of them is Stanley Rio, trained by George Noble and driven by his son John. George Noble dead heated on JR in the Dunedin final in 1965. If Stanley Rio can win, the Nobles will make history as the first father and son combination to drive Interdominion Grand Final winners.
Sporting Sun bounced straight into his gear. He's put in a couple of rough ones now, but he's hitting his stride again. Stanley Rio actually won the start. Paleface Adios began brilliantly. He's running 4th on settling down. Don't Retreat. Trusty Scott began fairly well. He's 3rd last. Getting back in the field was Pure Steel and Soul Command. On the turn out of the straight, and Sporting Sun has now dashed to the front. It's Sporting Sun on the fence, a length.
A horse in it called Sporting Sun, which Kevin Thomas trained and drove, and he'd been very impressive, winning a couple of heats from end to end and going record times. And Kevin, I think, was confident of being able to do likewise in the final, whereas I knew I had the best beginner. I could beat them all out, because old Stan was magic out of the barrier. And I thought, well, if I can get the sit on Sporting Sun, I'll give them some Larry Dooley when the business end comes along. So sure enough, that's just what happened. Kevin went to the front, and then I let him go, followed him, and down the back Paleface Adios came along and Pure Steel pursuing him, but I had time to leave the fence and beat them pretty easily in the finish and went a record time, mainly due to Sporting Sun. But the old horse really had them covered a long way out.
Then Trusty Scott, Conmurray cheats, Old Command and Don't Retreat last. 600 left to go, and it's Sporting Sun holding the lead. Sporting Sun a length and a half in front of Stanley Rio, who's hooked in on the fence. Pure Steel hard driven on the outside. Pike biding his time on Paleface Adios. Master Findlay next on the rails, and then Conmurray cheat. 400 left to go. Sporting Sun clear of Stanley Rio. Sporting Sun in front as they swing to the corner. 200 left to go. Stanley Rio looks a danger to him. I don't think Paleface can win. Sporting Sun straightens up a length in front of Stanley Rio, who's running him down. Stanley Rio's moved up to Sporting Sun. Master Findlay's getting through on the inside. It's Stanley Rio just in front of Master Findlay, and Sporting Sun. It's a New Zealand victory. Stanley Rio's won from Master Findlay. 3rd Sporting Sun.
The only thing that did disappoint me, I didn't get much of a reception from the crowd, and when you consider that the horse was an Australian and my father and myself were Australians, I thought, well, perhaps, we'd get a bit of a better reception, but you could have heard a pin drop. And I was a little bit disappointed in that, but nevertheless, we'll have to go back and have another go and see if we get a better turnout the next time.
The Nobles have won a unique place in harness racing history books.
There are many stories of horses who have looked good things going into Interdominion carnivals, only to find ways of being beaten. Parisian in Christchurch, Cardigan Bay in Perth, and Helwas in Auckland are just 3 who come to mind. But on the other hand, some of the early fancies have got home. One was the South Australian gelding Radiant Venture, who went to Perth in 1957 boasting a record of 23 wins from his previous 25 starts and 18 wins in succession. He won 2 of his 3 heats, started a 6-4 favourite in the final, and Port Pirie milkman Frank Connor drove him to an easy win. But good as Radiant Venture's record was, it was not to be compared with that of the West Australian star San Simeon in 1981. San Simeon and his trainer-driver Lou Austin left home in Perth to run in the Hobart series with a record of 28 starts for 28 wins. The figure was an Australian record for a winning sequence, and he was well on the way to matching the world record for an unbeaten sequence, which stood to the credit of the great American pacer Brett Hanover at 34. He took his first round heat in comfortable fashion, but in the second round, the New South Wales veteran Michael Frost breathed some life back into the carnival when he brought San Simeon's winning sequence to an end at 29. But on grand final night, it was San Simeon who was the raging hot favourite. The previous week had seen a public war of words between Victorian driver Vin Knight and the emotional Western Australian Lou Austin.
It was like a brainwashing effect. You become a terrible person, I did, I nearly lost my wife, my children, my staff, my job, my horse, me. It was just a combination of things, and at one stage there I did have a minor breakdown.
I was sort of probably getting at Lou a little bit, but it was probably just a little bit of tactics, because Lou's a real nice bloke and we're pretty good friends really, and I thought if he can just get a little bit jumpy he might miss this start, and it means a big thing in a big race.
Now they're starting to line up and they're off and racing in the Interdominion. Melfield
Knight is on Qatari Knight, who is one of the main dangers to San Simeon.
on the inside. He leads from Michael Frost, single again up around the outside. They're followed further back to Lehigh Lad. Down on the inside is Qatari Knight, followed by Melfield Tyros. Frosty Imp is third from last, followed by Grand Thor, who broke up into a Galapalo scrimmage. And there's one down at the back of the field. It's Michael Frost has lost the driver, and Pure Steel brings up the tail. Michael Frost is out of calculations. It's San Simeon, the leader, as they come down the stretch the first time. This will bring
San Simeon steps straight to the front, and the race was a procession.
Simeon does it well. A length out in front of single again. Back behind them, Lehigh Lad. Qatari Knight off the fence. A length and a half to Frosty Imp. Three deep around them. Grand Thor broken to a gallop. They are followed by Hardstraw, Melfield Tyros, the driverless Michael Frost and Pure Steel. Into the final lap. This is the 1981 Interdominion, and 140,000 awaits them at the judge. San Simeon in charge. Qatari Knight on the outside. Single again running third. Frosty Imp up on the outside. Back behind them, Lehigh Lad. They're followed by Hardstraw, Melfield Tyros. Boys has gone for the whip on Pure Steel, and further back to Grand Thor. Down the back section, it's still San Simeon. He bit it away a length. Qatari Knight's under the pump. Single again trying to get off the fence. They're followed by Frosty Imp, Lehigh Lad. Further back to Hardstraw, Melfield Tyros. Pure Steel's got to do something amazing to win. And Grand Thor's last onto the corner. And San Simeon's bit it away. Austin released the brakes and he kicked clear. In second place, single again.
Lou Austin is overcome with emotion, but he's done a professional job on the right night. The nerves don't matter now. He's won the Interdominion Championship. For Lou Austin and San Simeon, it truly is the night of glory.